record. So thank you for a minute. She has more than a decade in the solar industry, and in that she's been dedicated to the development of distributed generation solar globally. She's the founder of Solar Stewards, a social enterprise connecting corporate social responsibility initiatives with schools, universities, affordable and senior housing, places of worship, and nonprofits in marginalized communities. I got to know Dana a little bit during her time as a semifinalist in Solar Prize Round 5, which was, we were really pleased to work with her and see the amazing work they were doing at Solar Stewards, which kind of brought my attention to her for today's presentation, because I know she's got a lot of great information to share with all of you. She's been a judge with DOE and NREL, the Solar District Cup, a Core Accelerator member. She lives and resides in Atlanta, Georgia, where she's doing a lot of great work in climate action, environmental justice, social entrepreneurship for communities worldwide. And then, of course, she has some amazing credentials. So thank you, Dana, for being here today. Let's see if I can see you.
I can see you. Thank
yeah,
you.
There you go. Hi, Dana. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I know you've been under the weather this week, so thanks for joining.
Yes, well, thank you for having me. And unfortunately, COVID subsided just enough to be able to be present today. And it really is a privilege and an honor to be included in this opportunity and to share some of our experience and learnings as we're all on a journey. It's a continuous journey where we are fortunate enough to always get more information to keep evolving and moving forward. So thanks again for having me. And one correction, now I know why you were asking me to update this. We were a finalist.
Finalist, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's in my bio, so I need to update that. But thank you for your help with that as well. That was an amazing experience.
Yeah. And so I know, during this time, I had a chance to work with you during Solar Prize Round 5, but then I also, as I asked you to speak, I had a chance to just really kind of look at all the work you've been doing. And I had a chance to kind of just dive into a little bit more outside of Solar Stewards and saw that you've just participated in so many amazing groups. I can tell you really, dedicated a lot of your career and energy into just helping to bring change to this field. And I just was wondering if you could just share with the group just a little bit more about yourself outside of, my list of what is just more about your professional journey, and then, just some of those challenges and barriers you faced.
Sure. Well, absolutely. And, I'm going to take my career all the way back to just growing up in the energy community. And, that's a relatively new term now that we're using thanks to the IRA, or Inflation Reduction Act, energy community, AKA coal community, AKA Brownsfield. And, that's kind of an environmental degradation site. I'm from Western Pennsylvania originally, a small town called Johnstown, steel town surrounded by coal towns. And, I was pretty much, I guess you could say, forced to really think about things in an environmental justice lens. And so, when we talk about career, maybe it didn't catch up with me until later. But it made it very stark, the ramifications of environmental degradation on economies, local economies. For instance, we wanted, my town and the surrounding area wanted to embrace tourism with, some of the waterways, kayaking, fishing. However, with acid mine drainage, polluting those waterways, they'd smell like rotten eggs, they were orange. That wasn't an economic opportunity, just the cascading effects of, being a quote unquote frontline community that has to deal with the, legacy of fossil fuels. That's really shaped, where my career began. And now, that we're here, Solar Stewards, and this is probably a good place to talk about what Solar Stewards does. We connect the corporate procurement of renewable energy with opportunities in historically excluded communities. We like that term because it could mean, economically excluded. And of course, those that have been excluded from a racial bias, a gender bias, et cetera, in this country and across the world. Just recognizing that the impacts of climate change aren't going to affect all, equally. That we can do some really amazing work to not only mitigate climate change, but catch our society up with these new opportunities to more equitable opportunity, and that's for everybody. The benefits of equity is inherent for everyone, and there's a lot of stats to that. So, Solar Stewards, we connect those corporate opportunities to really create revenue for communities to use for the work that they're typically already doing to support their own communities, because no one knows what's good for a community more than that community themselves. And we see that play out, across the world. So I did want to kind of lay that foundation, but of course, the barriers are similar, to many in this field. Starting out as a young woman of color. When I say young, I'm talking about more like 15 years ago. But that being said, prior to the racial reckoning, it was, and I'm talking about 2020, and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, so many continued, victims of oppression and violence. But that being said, it wasn't an easy track, picking a career that, there weren't many that looked like me. But that being said, it's greatly evolved. We're always striving for more representation. But that being said, it was of course a challenge, and it continues to be a challenge. And I could go on about that, but I know there's more questions, and I'll probably sneak back to this question.
Yeah, I think definitely we'll be talking quite a bit more about that as we continue through. But you started to talk a little bit about Solar Stewards, but just with these teams and groups, I know, a lot of, maybe you've had a chance to learn a little bit more about the Inclusive Energy Innovation Prize, but, these are 18 teams that are really trying to make a difference in their community, and focus on many areas from renewable energy to workforce development. And I just wondered if you could share a little bit more about just what, as a CEO and founder of Solar Stewards, you facilitate these strategic partnerships between corporations and local solar projects. Can you share some examples of some of that? And, just kind of, I benefit hearing more some of the things you've been part of or seen about the country and these projects.
Sure. And let me know if I chop up any, because I heard a little delay in that audio.
Sorry.
No, just let me know. I'm monitoring my bandwidth here on my side. Sure. So, corporations now, they do understand that it's more of a stakeholder as opposed to shareholder opportunity for that value, that they are now accountable to not only their customers, but potential customers, and that those that don't like their, business practices have more of a microphone, via social media or, other outlets to express how unsatisfied they are and to really place that pressure. So, we've leveraged that to give these corporations an opportunity to answer that call. And then, when you see all of these ESG, environmental social governance, or CSR corporate social responsibility reports. They want to tell these stories. They not only want to say, we're 100% renewable, but they want a place to say, hey, we partnered with that community. We actually had a thought for that mid-cap business, not that Fortune 500, although I will say that a lot of our buyers are more, Fortune 100. But that mid-cap business that may be saying, we're 100% renewable or net zero isn't a feasible goal right now or in the next, 3 to 5 years. But they can say, we help that school district or we help that municipality, go solar. It's much more impactful for your average consumer than, maybe a three-digit 100% goal, which still leaves people, I mean, it sounds good, but, what does that mean for the average person? So that's been part of our success, just starting out, is helping them to think that way. And we've been doing that since 2016, 17. And, one of the indicators of that was, our executive branch at the time had pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, and we got to see the private sector say, okay, but we're going to move forward with our goals. We also saw, we're based here in Atlanta, Georgia, the city too busy to hate. And that was an expression coined way before my time, but and it continues to be true. Corporations really pressuring some of these public service commissions to get on board with renewables. And so we wanted to help communities leverage the power that the corporate sector had in that same way. So major success, again, has been, helping the market to think about value in this way, and also, supporting some programs. For instance, the SIGN program, right? So the one we're talking about now. Several awardees, you're given enough funds for some feasibility work to look at, barriers. What about implementation? The one thing that we want to be very savvy about is, getting communities excited about the potential, but then then what? We want to make sure to take them from ideation to execution. And of course, we're not the entire chain. We're, one tool in a toolbox, but certainly a helpful tool when it comes down to, well, where are we going to find the money for this? So just one of those tools. So what I can share, because of course, NDAs and corporates like to announce their own stuff, major tech companies, major telecom companies, all very aggressively looking for these opportunities. Municipalities across the US, some of which are thinking about creating energy equity funds with these proceeds, along with others. And some thinking about, projects and communities that they've really been trying to impact, that they just haven't found the resources for. Sustainability departments that have been chronically underfunded, finally having a multi-year funding stream, for instance. So we're really excited about that. Lots of projects in the works, trying to keep up. We're scaling as an enterprise. So those are some of the things I can share, and maybe more specifically offline. And then major challenges. Let me just say, and I think that this audience is in a great position to help remedy this. You might be surprised, and perhaps it's just the work we've already invested on the buyer side. But now our major challenges lie with the community recipients. What we need to get these things done. We use traditional rec registries. There's nothing different about those. That process has been in place for decades now. It's been scandal-free. It's been fairly straightforward, maybe a little, lots of steps involved, not necessarily complicated. But that being said, making sure that they adhere to that community-driven approach. The community gets to say, hey, this is what we need in our community. And I think that, there's a, and I think this is ingrained as a society that's really trying to turn this ship on equity, where it might be thinking it's good enough to helicopter in and tell a community, well, here's what we're going to do for you. That's just not equity. And so getting people to think and recognize the agency of communities, and not allowing, that's not even the right verb, acknowledging their voice and power is a challenge for the paradigm that we all have to exist in. And so, eliminating that barrier and helping everybody to transcend to this new, way of thinking that, again, is valuable for everybody is a challenge. And we certainly, hate to see interim folks standing in the way of, these immense resources for. So if you find yourself, it's always an opportunity for a self-eval to think, and what could I be doing to, either help or hurt this opportunity? Certainly is a part of the challenge. But then again, it's all growth process for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And in that, have you, can you share a little bit more about, maybe some strategies or, things that you've seen that have been successful in connecting to those communities, and how, you've been able to empower, individuals in those communities, historically underrepresented communities, to, act and to engage?
Yeah, I think this is a great question, because this is where I just want to remind everybody that there are already entities that are doing this work in almost every community across the globe. And so even for us, having, pretty deep roots in a lot of communities across the country. Again, we're based in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from Western Pennsylvania. I started my solar career out west in San Diego, Riverside, and Imperial counties. I see somebody's in the design program. That's great. That's why I always try to say STEAM and not STEM, because the arts are so powerful in delivering the message of these opportunities. Just recognizing that we don't need to go in and reinvent the wheel anywhere. Supporting the folks that are already doing this work and understanding that they have the most valuable perspective you could have. So here's an example. There's a superintendent of a school. One of our community partners was, talking to him about STEAM tools. And he said, you know what, I hear you, but we've got a lot of resources for STEAM. What we really need resources for our mental health counselor. Wow. I mean, as much as I talk about listening to communities, I was still like, wow, didn't even cross my mind, even with all of these, very tragic news stories about our youth that really needs the support. Took hearing that from the person who interacts with his district every day. And so we've always got to remind ourselves, that as practitioners, we do have to integrate a lot of worlds, but fortunately we can rely on communities to share with us their valuable insights. And then of course, we need to listen to them and execute on that. So that's one successful tool, is making sure that what we draw in our community benefits agreement is generated from communities. Of course, we've got a lot of translating, to get to KPIs and impact stats, so we can track that. But in the interim, it's just very rewarding to make sure that the work that these communities are already doing is supported and enhanced, and that their voices are included in this, and that's an important part of our program.
Yeah, definitely. And I didn't mention this early on, but if anyone wants to, jump in with a question or put something in the chat, I'd love to have you, be able to interact and share or discuss any of these topics further. But thanks, Dana. And so in that, can you share? We talked a little bit about justice, and so you're talking about Solar Stewards model for integrating environmental justice and corporate social responsibility. Are there, again, methods or tools that you've used to also on the other side inform, the corporate side and engage them and, kind of just shed light on the needs of these of communities?
Sure. So I'm going to nerd out a little bit. Please excuse me, and I'll try to make it brief. The tool that we use specifically are renewable energy markets, specifically unbundled RECs. And there's a great video on our website. It does the best job of explaining what a REC is. I should just memorize this video because trying to do it myself, I'm still trying. But that being said, it's not that complicated. It's just I think the video calls it the currency of renewable energy. I like how they put that. But that being said, these are renewable energy credits are what corporates buy every day, particularly the unbundled one, which is when the energy attribute, the REC, renewable energy credit, is sold separate from the renewable power. And so, in this opportunity where you can sell an energy attribute, separate from the power, for instance, if you're on affordable housing and, you're selling that, power to the residents and at a certain price, you can take that REC revenue and use it to lower that price for those residents, for instance, or use that revenue to fund workforce training. Because one thing that we've heard from a lot of affordable housing developers and community members is they care about, social mobility. And so opportunities for residents to recognize, economic growth is perhaps more important than a bill savings, even though they can all be correlated. Certain communities have certain priorities. For instance, the school district, as you heard, they're thinking about learning, they're thinking about mental health opportunities, staff. And so, part of our program is recognizing that this renewable energy, particularly when it's generated on site, can aid in all of these multiple value propositions. And speaking specifically to this question is getting those buyers to see that value as well. And so fortunately, and it's been a whole coalition and it's been a complete social movement that we've seen the past, let's say 3 years, but even beyond that, there has been a whole reframing of the multifaceted value propositions. Fortunately, I think we're in a world now where we can start to, just like nature, interconnect all of these. It's not just marketing, it's not just sustainability, it's not just, finance. They're all interconnected. And, the more we can move business into thinking that way, which is a very organic way, I think the better off the business community will be as well. So that's part of the integration. It's also, here's another distinguishing factor. We're a social enterprise. We're not a nonprofit. We have a social enterprise model. We pass 100% of that social rec revenue, social renewable energy credit, just to verify my acronyms, to the communities and the community partners. And how we do that is we charge a membership for the corporates to join our marketplace and to see the originated projects that we've helped communities and cities upload onto our platform. And at the same token, some green banks and funders also join our platform in that way. But that's social enterprise model. We wanted to make sure that we were reflective of the types of institutions that are going to generate the type of inclusiveness from an economic standpoint as well. So that's one of the reasons that we're so involved in organizations like RISE, Women in Renewable Energy. Sorry if I messed that acronym up. but we know RISE, BOSS, Black Owners of Solar Services, other groups that certainly talk about the business role in renewable energy development. I mean, it's great that there's nonprofits out here, but we also want to talk about economic inclusion, wealth creation, job creation with livable wages that can create stable households and growth in communities, and that's why we've chosen the social enterprise model that we have. And I think it goes very well with very large corporations really diving deep into their ESG strategy as well, with them diversifying their procurement strategies when they look at what's our solar development, what's our procurement spend, and who should we be really looking to bring into that. That's important as well.
Definitely. And when you're looking at these like newer models in a community, someone that's just kind of starting off on a new solar project within a community or another clean energy, are there some funding models? I know you talked about some of those, but are there other funding models that you're seeing that are trending, or that are a good place to start when you're first getting this groups together and starting that discussion?
Yeah, well, this is a great question. After the passing of the IRA,
Yes.
a lot more now. So fun question here. Funding models. Well, first off, I want to say that we really did cut our teeth and spend a lot of time with, and some call it the mush market, munis, universities, schools, and hospitals is what that stands for. We include, places of worship, affordable housing. But what I'm trying to say is all of these kind of community-centered applications that may be structured as a nonprofit, and then, traditionally prior to this or last year, had to find some, intermediary to monetize the federal tax credit. Now you have a direct pay scenario. So yippee, it's a whole brand new day for you. So what I would have typically said, hey, think about a power purchase agreement. And, I'm not sure how far along this audience is, but I'm going to say that there's so many resources. You can Google PPA if you don't know what I'm talking about right now. But fortunately, perhaps there's an opportunity with this direct pay, meaning, you can monetize those federal tax credits yourself. Now, tax credits, not the same as renewable energy credits, just to make sure no one's getting confused. Lots of credit, two different credits. We're talking about tax credits now. That mush market group can monetize those tax credits with direct pay. It gives you a lot more options than just a PPA nowadays. And so I'd encourage in exploring that. Of course, grants are readily available now. I want to give a shout out to the solar, the solar prize. That was, these types of opportunities are, and as far as I'm unprecedented to really throw your hat in the ring and get some, startup, let's say, some initial funding, some pre-development funding for just to get the ball rolling and started. Those are two things I would explore. Of course, it depends on, what type of project you're really looking at. Of course, leasing, power purchase agreement, they're not available everywhere. Part of the reason why we chose to use, rec markets, whether it's voluntary, meaning there is no renewable portfolio standard, the rec market, or compliance, meaning there is, renewable portfolio standard, is it gives us the opportunity to still do impact in, places in the US. And I always do this because I'm, talking about this band of poverty in this country. It's kind of a southern southern band that follows, overlaid with, unfriendly renewable policy. I mean, it's great to have voluntary, but that being said, it hasn't been codified in law. But this gives us an opportunity to really still serve those communities that, for instance, don't have the opportunity to do a PPA. So those, that's just a brief of the funding models that are available. I want to give crowdfunding. Crowdfunding is a new way that people are looking at some entities. And I can give my LinkedIn and, share a couple of the firms that I know that are doing some things offline after this. Crowdfunding is certainly a new way that folks are exploring funding as well. And I love that democratization opportunity there. You know, I know I'm missing a couple. Maybe I'll think of some in the next question. There's a lot available. So
yeah, well, that's good, and that's good to know. And I think there are many resources out there. Maybe we can do some work on our side of just compiling some of those for those that might be interested. But there was a question in the chat from Marie Francis that said, how do subscribers to the community solar market save money on their energy bill with the renewable energy credits because they have to pay to subscribe? Is there an assurance that there is net savings?
Well, I appreciate you bringing this up because I would love to do more with community solar. The barrier there is typically when you have a community solar program, it is, allotted by the utility. They're the ones who say yes or no, you can do it. And when they say yes, a lot of times, not 100%, although I'd love someone to research and get me a real percentage here, they keep the RECs for themselves. Not whether or not they pass those proceeds along, don't know. Sometimes no, a lot of times maybe no, but they should, because technically those renewable energy attributes belong to the subscribers. So just something to consider there. Part of that barrier there is also an educational / advocacy barrier, because by the time you're done explaining to somebody, subscribe to this community solar, you can save, and then you expect, a salesperson to say, okay, well, what about these renewable energy credits? And people are like, the renewable what? The credits, the tax? No, not the tax credits. Believe me, I deal with this. So that being said, it's an educational opportunity to explain, hey, there's another very valuable attribute here that can be monetized for the benefit of this community in this array. But certainly we've got corporates always looking for, hey, what type of community solar? So if you're negotiating some type of community solar and you have the opportunity, try to make sure that the community keeps the RECs. And part of, what Solar Stewards does is to make sure that they're monetized at a value that's impactful for the community and in a term that's impactful for the community as well. So thank you for raising that point. And certainly when they're available, meaning they're not already claimed, you can't sell a REC twice. Nobody should be doing that. I haven't even heard of anybody doing it, but that's why we have registries, to make sure that they're counted one and done, and when they're done, they're retired, and that's it for them. But that being said, when they are available, what an amazing opportunity to bring more resources to that community array.
Great, thanks. Thank you, Dana. So this next question, we've kind of talked about this already. And let me just touch on another question from Jeff before we moved on. Can't the SRECs, RECs being used to pay for the cost of community solar or other solar projects?
Sure. One thing about, and so when he says SRECs, that's usually the term for solar renewable energy credits. So when we talk about social RECs, we're talking about, and we're solar stewards, so clearly we've got an affinity for solar, but it really is any renewable attribute, is any REC. our distinguishing factor again is, it's priced at a rate and a term that's impactful, and all of those proceeds go to benefit the community and the project, right? Which in the term of, let's call it traditional or even generic rec, it could go in the pocket of a developer. It could go to the utility. Where's that money go? But we want to make sure from a inclusive play that the economies of this renewable energy opportunity are really recognized, felt physically in people's wallets and in their livelihoods by everybody. So of course, SRECs are used to pay for the cost of solar. One distinguishing factor I want to say is, you can't sell a REC before it's created. It's just not really good practice. You can get a commitment before. So before the array is generating, there's no RECs to be sold, but certainly there are buyers looking to get, dibs, remember dibs? To get dibs, prior to that coming online, because it is a market where buyers are pretty aggressive. They want those really impactful stories and projects. So you can use that commitment, and this is what we've done, use that commitment from a, credit-worthy, large corporation buyer to secure the rest of your financing, get better terms. We just live in this capitalist society, and as soon as you have some, brand associated, people take you a little bit more seriously. And, that's part of our program, that's ingrained in it. So that commitment, even if it's not money up front, can be really used to smooth the rest of the process out. But yeah, RECs are used to finance things, all over, particularly in the compliance market. And that's, again, where you have a renewable portfolio standard.
Thanks, Dana. So, like I said, we've talked about this a little bit more, but just as we talk about this session and in trying to engage our communities and work within, bringing people along. So how would you kind of define a clean energy expert and a person that you would be ideally a person you'd want to engage with in your community? You've mentioned school districts and places of worship. Are there others or other areas that you would look to engage and empower communities to develop these clean energy experts?
How would you define a clean energy expert? Well, first I would say clean and renewable are not the same thing. It's clean is one syllable. It's easier to say clean, but I do want to make sure that we all know that there's a distinction there. And when we're talking about RECs, it's only renewables. So I personally have to be careful with our language. RECs, you've got to be very careful about claims and language. So just want to clarify that. But honestly, I would open it up to say that I think the real challenge here is for sustainability professionals broadly, renewable energy professionals, to understand that their expertise is only enhanced by the value of the communities that they're working in. It's easy to get in your practitioner mindset and think, I know all of this, and here's what you need to do. But it's amazing, the type of value that's created with collaboration in these communities. I gave the great example of the mental health counselor in that district. What clean energy expert would come up with that themselves? And then all of a sudden they've got a project that they can sell to the PTA moms and dads, to the school board. It's just these multiple, just be open to the value that collaboration and diverse teams have to offer. And then particularly when we talk about the gold rush moment that we're having about these adders, these low moderate income LMI adders, be aware that, you know, there's a big blind spot for a practitioner to go into a community which he or she has no familiarity and begin some type of sales process. I mean, again, the value of a diverse team can help you really overcome where, you know, your verbiage might be wrong. You want to go up to someone and say, hey, you're low income, you're perfect for this program. Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of opportunity to embrace this this moment and recognize that the value that we create, we're going to be creating together. Not everybody has all the answers. So that's what I have to say about that. But what I will say is there's a lot of very knowledgeable, passionate, renewable and clean energy experts out here. And so it's not a matter of that lacking, it's a matter of embracing that opportunity for collaboration. That's what I'd say to this.
Great. Yeah. And in that, you know, that a lot of our teams are also working on workforce development. And, you know, I just, you know, want to kind of, this is kind of our final question as we wrap up today, but just to talk a little bit about, you know, how do we take those first steps to creating a diverse workforce? You know, what kind of resources are you seeing deployed within communities to create these diverse workforces and to, you know, bring attention to careers within renewable energy, clean energy, and just being able to deploy those energy assets in marginalized communities?
What are some of the first steps? Well, you know, and I know that we've talked a lot about DEI over the past couple of years, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Now we're adding justice. Now we're adding belonging.
Yeah.
All of them together.
It just keeps going.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, they all do mean very specific things. I think it's critically important. You know, and I can tell you from personal experience, there's nothing more exhausting than being, you know, the only representative of you know, some marginalized group in a room, and you know, that being kind of understood as that's enough, and you know, sharing valuable insights and having them, you know, completely dismissed or not really recognized. And not only that, maybe a year, 2 years later, some crisis erupts and it's like, oh wait, how do we have done that? And so, you know, I just want to go back to that inclusion. I think it's part of the belonging to say that, okay, so now we've got diverse teams, we've got a diverse workforce, we've got to create the type of environment where we're really utilizing the value. And I guess this goes back to what I was just talking about, but hey, it's important, and part of the real opportunity and challenge here is making sure that these market entrants are really valued and supported for the value that they bring. And you know, if you're not doing that, then you're cheating yourself. Also recognizing that, you know, this value is inherent for all of us. And again, lots of data. I think a great research paper by Deloitte that talks about, you know, the value here. I think it's, you know, the GDP that our country is missing from this systemic racism and oppression is at least 6, maybe 4 or 6% of our GDP, just because of, you know, denying folks opportunities. And I mean, that's just embarrassing as a country. But anyway, you know, just recognizing that these communities have agency. They've got their own concerns. You know, just like your HOA says, you know, I don't really want to see those solar panels. Hey, you know, aesthetics are a personal decision. You know, if they want a playground and not a solar array, well, maybe you can do something canopied with a playground, or maybe not. You know, you just understand that every community really has the opportunity. I mean, yes, NIMBYism is real, but if it's real for some folks, maybe it can be real for all folks, but we can all work together to find a solution here, particularly when they understand that the value, right, that's inherent, and also to overcome this generational lack of trust. You can understand that if you've been exploited and people have really been taking advantage and using you for so long, you're going to look at opportunities with a different lens. And so, you got to be cognizant of that. And when you've got diverse members on your team, they can help you through this thinking process. So sometimes you might go in and think you've got the best solution in the world and you're getting pushed back. Got to recognize, their different viewpoint on this and help to work through that. And then maybe it's just speaking to their specific need that you didn't think about. For instance, maybe it's the mental health counselor. Maybe it's, we really wanted that to be a playground and not a, looking like an industrial asset here. So that's one thing that I would add. And I hope I'm not sounding like a broken record, but if I am, then it just
No, not at all.
The importance of some of these things.
And some of it, that's just what we need. We need to be able to review it, go over it, and yeah. But the question in the chat, and you, if you want, you can look at David's full comment. But his question was, what sort of agreements and models would you point to for institutional partnerships across sectors with both institutional and residential member cooperatives, consortia, or similar, more democratic self-management?
Well, thank you. This is a great question because a lot of this can get trapped in the legalese. And so one thing that we strive to do is make things as familiar as possible. Fortunately, we do have very familiar vehicles for this type of, to paper, as they say, the legal people, to paper it up. And, that's just a community benefit agreement. Fortunately, that's nothing new. And so when you can look at something in the form of a community benefit agreement that has, very specific, benchmarks of success and milestones, that is, helpful for everybody. I mean, we've got to measure this success, or at least measure progress. Let me put it that way, because, one thing that I think I mentioned at the beginning of this talk is, just money doesn't fix everything. And particularly when you're looking to deliver money to communities, resources and funds to communities that haven't, all of a sudden this resistance just pops out of, where'd this come from? You think you're solving a problem and then, the truth comes to light. So all that to say, keeping it simple with the same vehicles that have been used really helps to eliminate any real or fictitious opportunities for objection, keeping the benchmarks for progress, pretty transparent and simple, tying them with some metrics, being reasonable about them, really helps to reinforce these opportunities. So, I mean, it maybe sounds so basic, but when you've got those opportunities to track things and then, reasonable time frame, I think that's the last thing I can say to this is impact isn't created in a year. It's an ongoing process, multi-year opportunity. And so, try to think on a longer term basis. Part of our program really trying to get our buyers to think, beyond just an annual, with that multi-year commitment to really showcase. And I think that's part of a really great story is, hey, we started here, started from the bottom, now we're here. Sorry. But, that opportunity is part of this and reframing, how we can really showcase the value. I hope that answered David's question. Pretty general, but.
Well, thank you, Dana, and I appreciate you being here today. Thank you for taking your time. We've got just a couple minutes left if anyone wants to chime in at the end now with any comments or questions. As we wrap up, feel free to. I really appreciate you, Dana, and your time, and I really hope you're feeling better soon. But I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions for Dana, if you'd like to send them to me, my email is on the screen, and I'm happy to kind of help that relationship with Dana, and I can follow up and with any other resources you might need. So thank you again. Thanks for everyone for being here today, and hope you have a good afternoon.